three different processes, like the pills and what should those be criminal acts or no?
Self-administered.
Yeah, like the pill that. If a woman takes a pill at 8 weeks, let's say, and with the intent to abort the child, is that? How do you feel about that? Should that be criminal, or should that be one of those situations where it's like it's your decision and you can do that?
I do not see criminal intent on the part of a person who's in distress in that situation. I don't see criminal intent because I don't think it's criminal intent.
How can you justify that when we can have options for adoption? If a bill was put before you that had graduated culpability for the woman, depending on age and situation, but had a graduated level of culpability, would you sign it?
I think
criminal intent, but culpability up.
I think I like the term that you're using, a graduated culpability. Yes. I call it proportionality.
Right.
And proportionality, intelligent law enforcement recognizes proportionality. Like, well, what is the proportion? When you say, a person is a victim of child abuse, it's like, okay, well, it could be that they weren't in a seatbelt and someone says that's abuse, or it could be that they are being their lives are destroyed. So proportionality is an issue. If we're talking about the punishment of a woman who decides to do that, I think there's proportionality on that part too.
I absolutely believe in that. I'm a criminal justice. I've graduated in this area in CJ. My concern is, along with yours, my concern is that we're not holding women responsible for their actions, and abortion is on the rise in Utah, regardless of what we're doing as far as everything surrounding them. I have no issues with a graduated level of culpability, but it's got to stop, because the one person who has total control is the one who is not culpable.
So you tell me, what law would you pass that would end all abortion?
I don't think. That's why I say.
That's.
If you criminalize it, it would end it.
Well, it wouldn't end, but boy, would it drop in the state of Utah. There's nothing you can do about another state. There's just nothing. Because a woman can run to another state, and if they support abortion, they can have it, but they're not doing it in this state.
My father used to say, we need more preachers, not more police.
Exactly.
So you've asked my position. I think there should be a law on the books that said life begins at conception.
Right.
Anything after that.
Fine.
But when it comes to the enforcement of those laws, the punishment, the shaming, I would prefer to see that have a much more proportional level to the and sensitivity.
That it should be there. But do you believe that there should be a law of graduate, just like there is with taking a life?
I think that's
on this side.
I think that's what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I want to make that clear. Would you sign a bill that would have that kind of graduated leveling for a woman? Would you sign a bill?
I call it proportionality, and I believe.
You're not answering my question.
No, I don't understand. I don't understand the legal term of graduated.
Okay, proportionality is the same thing as graduated.
So,
depending on the situation of the woman and what's happening with the woman, there would be differing levels. There would be ever-increasing levels of criminal culpability, just like there is for taking a life on this side.
I don't think we're very far apart on this.
Okay. Would you sign a bill like that?
So here's the problem with a bill like that. Now you're saying, hey, legislature, would you in advance define those steps, those levels of culpability?
Well, we have to have a law that would allow public safety to be able to arrest a woman who is purposely, for the third time, had an abortion.
I appreciate your position on that. I disagree. I think that's where the judicial system comes into play, and that's where I believe that the law can take into account. I like basic, simple, clean laws. This is the law. You break the law, you go to court. Now, what happens at court? If I run a stop sign, it's probably different than if I, ram my car through the, the gas pumps at a local 7-Eleven. You know, there's a difference there, and that's what the law will say. So you say you're a prosecutor or a?
No, graduated
Can I ask another question,
criminal
though?
justice
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the university.
So
Yeah.
this is a little bit of a different question.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you and
Thanks.
Carson would both do great. Would you consider, and I'm not with any camp, I'm not supporting anybody, I'm not with any, on the ground with anybody, I just have an idea. I think you and Carson Jorgensen would both do good. Would you consider him as, I'm going to ask him the same thing, you consider him as your lieutenant governor, running mate, I'm going to ask him if he would consider you, because I think you both have a lot of good qualities and good principles.
I'm looking around for my lieutenant governor because hey,
I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote for you.
thank you.
But return phone call when you get to the office. Make sure you return phone call.
Oh, that's easier said than done sometimes. Thank you.
So how do
Have you chosen a lieutenant governor?
I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is Lane Bangeter, and Carson has chosen a lieutenant governor as well.
Yeah, I understand that he had,
Yeah.
So how do we
Sorry.
how do we educate the public to keep Cox out even though he's already in? How do we get you in over a Cox machine that's going to hit during the primary?
Yeah, that's big
How do we
money.
do that? That's a big hurdle.
So, first of all, I'll say I'm running against Spencer Cox. He is the incumbent. He is the person to beat. Whatever happens in the convention today, whoever comes out of that is going to be in a primary with Spencer Cox because he's got the signatures. I support Sylvia. She's done some amazing things. I support Carson. We agree on so many things. I do have the background, the experience, the legislative experience, the county commission experience. I'm a CPA. I'm a professional. A long history of standing up for things so between those contenders, I think I've got the qualifications, but ultimately it's going to come down to who can beat Spencer Cox. I believe I'm the person that can beat Spencer Cox in that primary race.
Can I get a picture with you real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Come on. Here you go. Yeah. And for my buddies here. You go ahead.
Come over you next.
You go ahead. Go ahead. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Good luck to you.
election integrity?
I know there's 100 people here.
luck to you.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff McDonald. I'm actually from Monticello.
Oh, okay.
Grew up there quite a bit.
Yeah.
A whole lot of family. In fact,
Yeah.
my sister owns a patio there in Blanding. Lana.
Lana,
Arthur.
she's your sister?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got
My favorite place to eat, by the way.
I like it there too.
Yeah.
I got a question for you quickly. If you would have been, this is hypothetical, which you're going to love, if you'd have been governor during the COVID years, would you have done anything differently than what was done? How would you handle COVID
Well,
in this state?
as an indication, when the thank you, when the edict went out from the governor's office that nobody was to go outside their family, their immediate family, for Thanksgiving dinner, I was a newly elected representative, so I issued my own edict. It talked about the history of Thanksgiving, what it meant, and that you could have Thanksgiving dinner with whoever you wanted. Signed, Phil Lyman. As much authority to issue this edict as the governor has to issue that other edict. I don't like unconstitutional orders. I don't care how intelligent they are. I don't like unconstitutional orders. I really liked Kristi Noem's response in South Dakota when she got the same instructions. Her response was, "Nah, we're good." And that was about the end of it. No Corona task force, no vans, no call-in lines, no fines on businesses that didn't enforce it. She just, and think of the cost savings, and not just, and more importantly than the cost savings is the relationships that were rescued because of that, because she said, in South Dakota, people can decide for themselves. I thought she validated the people, and that's what I would 100% do that.
Thank you.
And that's not in retrospect. I was doing it at the time, so.
Pleasure to meet you.
You too.
You got my vote.
Thank you.
I got a question for everybody.
Yes.
Can you list off the 3 distinctions that are the biggest contrasts between your policy prescriptions and Spencer Cox's policy prescriptions? What are the 3 biggest contrasts why we should support you for governor over Spencer Cox?
Thank you for that question. I won't be quite as simple as this, but I could say legislative, executive, and judicial.
There you go.
But it's really the lanes of the government. The executive branch is a powerful branch of government, and it should be. But as soon as it starts going in and saying, we're going to help the legislators draft legislation, we're going to work with outside entities, and we're going to bring them in, and we're going to spend all of the interim drafting legislation. And so the UEOC, that's the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, I show up as a legislator, we've got 8 water bills, and all of them have the stamp of the UEOC on, and I'm saying, well, what is this? Nobody knows. So I say, well, it's the governor, and it's the agency heads, and it's the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. So it has the appearance of it. This is a must-pass bill. But it didn't come through the legislature. It didn't come from the bottom up. It came from the top down, it's unconstitutional. The governor should not be drafting legislation. I would get the governor in his legislative branch or in his executive role. I'd get the legislature empowered in their executive role, and I would tell them, don't bring me a bill that leaves a bunch of rule making to the executive branch. Like, do your dang job. And then right along lines with that, this is all kind of separations of powers. So keep the federal government in their lane, push power back down to the local level, to the counties. They're amazing organizations that can do so much. So separation of powers, federalism, that whole thing.
10th Amendment.
10th Amendment, yeah. So that would be maybe 1, 2, and 3, or if that's one of them. The other thing that I'm passionate about is education. We've got an education system that has, we've created a bureaucracy that's turned into the biggest impediment to good education of our kids, and they go against the parents. So to recognize parenthood as the primary thing and push, again, if I had my way, I would push all of those decisions down to the parental school councils that every school has. If that meant getting rid of school districts altogether, I don't think we'd miss them if we had the mechanism in place to empower those parent councils. The other thing you'd see if we did that is you'd see the parents, instead of pulling their kids out of public schools, would say, this is our school, and we're going to have a little bit more control. There's always going to be the outliers, there's going to be disagreements, but it's going to be much more likely to be run the way that community wants it if it's done at a smaller level. This idea of concentrating power, making bigger and bigger schools, bigger and bigger entities, bigger and bigger companies, with more and more dominance in Utah, I think we've done ourselves a real disservice. So the education is one of those, and then maybe just, I guess, an extension of that would be our economy. Rather than going out and trying to recruit big companies to the Wasatch Front, I would try to get out of the way of extractive industries, small businesses, the patio, the guy, to let those people run their businesses without so much heavy hand of the government. Right now, I'm a CPA, so I work with these businesses. They fear the IRS. They fear the State Tax Commission. They fear the Department of Workforce Services. All of these things because they've got more and more regulations that they're struggling to keep up with. So you could fix that really simply with some adjustments in that. That's my philosophy.
Okay, one last follow-up. Federal lands, so Spencer Cox's position on Utah vis-a-vis federal lands, how would that contrast with your position about federal lands and state lands, public land policy?
On public lands, I believe that Utah gained jurisdiction of those lands at statehood in 1896. That boundary actually means something. The fact that we are deferring now to federal agencies that are run by environmentalists back in Washington, D.C. to tell us what we can do with our logging and our forest management, this is a healthy forest will produce 40% more water than an unhealthy forest. We're trying to fill the Great Salt Lake by buying out alfalfa farmers and making them look like the bad guys, when we should be doing is going up in the forest, having some robust, good logging companies and activities that make our forests healthy. The reason we don't do that, federal government. Yeah, it's federal land, and they say no. The reason we've got such an influx of illegal immigration, federal policies. You can't detain them. The reason our schools are full of SEL and CERT and these things, federal policies, Department of Education, all these things that we never, 10th Amendment, we didn't delegate those powers to the federal government, so why are we now saying that, ceding those, and not just ceding them, but saying, well, in Utah, we don't violate federal law. To me, I say if the federal law is unconstitutional, you got to tell it to pound sand, sooner the better, and you have to do it on the front end. we passed that exit a long time ago, so we've got a lot of work to undo to get back to this idea of true statehood. But if you have statehood, that means if you understand statehood, it means you understand parenthood, it means you understand personhood, and all of those things make for a really beautiful system of, like the Republican form of government. Kind of like what the founder said. We're going to do that.
Cheers. Hey, thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.
Picture with the new governor of Utah here, Jordan?
Cute. That's cute.
That's my grandson. All good. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Hey, good luck today. It'll be a good day.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah. Let me grab a picture here real quick.
Okay.
Sorry.
Milton Carroll, Con Carroll.
Oh, hey, how are you doing?
to see you.
It's really good to see you. So good to see you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Vote for you.
Glad to see you, Milton. It's awesome.
You have a Second Amendment question, but you can take his first.
Do you want to talk? Hey, I do want to introduce Lane Bangeter. He's my Lieutenant Governor, Lane Bangeter.
Hey everybody, Phil Lyman, godsend, he's prepared, we're both prepared. And appreciate, we humbly ask for your vote. It's going to be a great day. Thank you so much. Phil Lyman.
Thanks, Lane.
Question.
Did I?
I just had
Sorry.
a quick Second Amendment question.
Oh yeah.
So what will you do as governor
Thanks,
to
Lane.
protect Utah and Second Amendment rights from the federal government infringing on our rights?
I think Utah has done a really good job of sending that message. The one thing we could do more is officially declare ourselves a sanctuary state
Yes, please.
for the Second Amendment.
Yes, please.
I think we've said, hey, if they try to do this, we're not going to go along. We should just put that in writing, in a document, put it in the Constitution.
Where does that come from the legislature, or does that come from your office?
It comes from the legislature.
Okay.
The executive can say the same thing. You know, you're never touching our guns.
I will talk to my legislators.
But it honestly, it comes from the people, right?
It does.
If the people say Utah has a right to bear arms state, and we're not going to give that up, that message should work its way up to where it's like, okay, we've enshrined it, no matter what the Biden administration does, or any other administration for that matter. Utah's already got it on the books. We're not going to do that.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Did the FBI and the Secret Service commit a crime when they killed that man in Provo? And if governor, what would you do about it?
Yeah, so they go into Mr. Robertson's house, 6 o'clock in the morning. First of all, they flashbang outside. They can't break through the door, so they break through the window and flashbang in the house. And then they say that he pulled a gun on him. No body cam footage to show that. Shoot him 17 times. And then they say, we probably should have an investigation on what the FBI did. Who do they get to do the investigation? The FBI. I called the Utah County Sheriff and I said, I hope you're doing an investigation on this. This is your citizen. This was a member of your community, and it should be investigated by the sheriff's office. And I think they're doing that. But yeah, stuff like that is. That government becomes the very problem that they claim to be the solution to. Instead of making our life safer, they make it much less safe. And that killing was absolutely a message to all of Utah, because Biden was in Arizona the day before designating a 1 million acre monument on top of the United States strategic uranium reserves. And tragic what happened.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Phil.
Hey, good to see you too.
Go ahead.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
1, 2, 3.
Hey, thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
So I have a question.
I saw you on Mike Adams. That's where I found out about you. You talked about using Utah's resources, but would you stop all the bioengineering of like our foods, the biosludge on our farmlands, and the geoengineering of the skies and everything else?
I love that question. And what I say is a strong system is harder to infiltrate than a weak system. And we're being infiltrated. We are being weakened and infiltrated. And a lot of it, I'm not a food expert. I'm not a biosciences expert. But I do know the stuff that's been put into our food that has changed our hormones, our genetics, our systems to some extent. And the reason I think that's permitted to go is because you've got a larger and larger concentration of control over the food system. So you disperse that, you push that back down to the local level where farmers can sell their milk, where ranchers can sell their beef, where people can sell their produce. You're going to have a much healthier economy. And Utah has tried to do that. It's always astonishing to me the amount of pushback that we get when we say we want people to be able to produce food and sell it to their neighbors. And there's a lot of pushback saying, you can't do that. And as soon as you see it going through the official channels, you start to see the introduction of things that we would never want if we were calling those shots ourselves. So if I knew more about how to regulate that, I'd probably have a better answer, but I do know how to incentivize the honest production of the food, and that's to stop punishing those farmers who want to produce food and grow chickens and beef and raise eggs and cattle. And that's what we would be more healthy if we get back to that.
Tennessee legislature, they just passed a bill to block it in their state. So would you propose a bill?
To do what?
Would you start a bill to propose that for Utah, just like Tennessee did?
Oh yeah, I mean, governors. So I'm a legislator now, so I would definitely sponsor a bill that does that. And I've sponsored a couple of food bills, it's just to allow people to sell raw milk and things like that. But to get rid of those things would take a legislator to do that. As a governor, I would be 100% in support of it.
And then the last question, would you prevent businesses from taking money from the CCP, like Young Automotive Group and others?
It's easy to say that you would prevent the CCP from buying land or for taking money from the CCP. The problem is, what about BlackRock? Is BlackRock the CCP? How do you track that through? Money is a liquid, a fluid thing, and it flows and it goes this direction. All I know is the world powers that are coming down from the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, all of that money is coming from nations, including China, including Russia. Most of it against the United States, most of it detrimental to our interests. So enforcing a law that says we're not going to allow companies to take money from the CCP, I find it really hard to enforce something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill, fellow CPA. Can you
Hey,
tell us about...
how are you doing?
Good, and you know a little bit about tax because you studied under Professor Haney at the U?
Yes?
Okay, you know about tax that good.
Yes, he was my
I figured
professor.
You did, yeah, same. What year did you get your master's?
Oh, I was up there in 1999.
Okay, a little after me.
Yeah.
Anyway, good luck. Nice to meet you.
I was a little older. I had about 5 years between my bachelor's and my master's.
I showed up unprepared once or twice.
Yeah, once or
Never
twice.
Again. Take care.
Simple question.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the decision for your running mate and their qualifications?
Oh, wow. If we're talking about Lane Bangeter, he has such a wealth of experience in government in Idaho, in Utah, in Washington, D.C. He was the executive director for Trump's campaign. He worked with Trump for 4 years in Washington, D.C. He's a shrewd businessman, great policymaker, knows everybody, he's well connected, and a great candidate. He believes that the election should be secure, which is an important qualification if you're going to be a lieutenant governor in Utah. And he's got that administrative background and ability. I think is going to make him very, very powerful. Plus he's got a national reach that I think could really help Utah as well. Thanks.
So I talked to you last week about you recommended Trent Christensen for AG. Do you still feel like he's a good choice?
What I've said is I really like Trent's message. The other issues that he's got, the hurdles he's got to overcome, I don't understand the complexities of those. I take him at his word. I like several of the other candidates, and I think we've got a really good field of candidates. The thing that's resonated with Trent is his fire about elections and cleaning up the elections. His fire about making sure that the Attorney General never becomes an appointed position. But yeah, it's not a.
But if he can't get approved by the Utah Bar, he cannot serve in that position. And I talked to him the other night, and he's out to like July. He's past the primaries of being able to be approved.
That's going to be an issue for him, isn't it?
Trent Christensen.
Yeah.
So my other question, Trent Christensen for AG. So my other question question is for you. With getting along with legislators as the governor, do you think you have good relationships with the current legislators?
I have a lot of very close relationships with the legislators, but I've always said I didn't get into public service to make friends, and so far it's working. You know, whether as a commissioner or as a legislator, my responsibility was always to the people that sent me there, not to the people that I was associated with. The governor's office honestly appeals to me quite a bit because I'm probably not known as like a team player, and yeah, I mean that in a good way. And there's supposed to be tension between the legislators and the governor. Right now, there's tension between leadership and those that aren't. It's like you're in the club or you're not in the club, and that's where the tension lies. It should be between the legislative body should be a tight-knit group of people because they are taking on the executive branch, and there should be a healthy tension there. Anything that helps to preserve the liberties of the people. So.
Can I take just a quick picture?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're totally voting for you.
Thank you.
And your cute wife.
Question about what do you think the state role should be in housing development and planning throughout the state? What should the state role be?
Free market. Get out of the way. Let builders build. The fact that we have the International Building Code dictating everything we do, which honestly, there's so many minutiae of detail in that if they want to find a violation, all they have to do is go and look and they'll find some violation. We need to get back to a realistic building code, get out of the way. All of our high density, low income housing in urban areas is because there are forces at work that want high density populations in urban areas. They want people to move away from the countries and move into the cities. And there's no reason why Utah should follow that model. We're kind of an outdoorsy state. We like our creeks and our mountains and our roads, and we should be able to expand a little bit more than we've been able to.
So what can you do as governor? What can you do as governor to affect change in that?
Well, the opposite of what we're doing now, I guess. We just said we're building 35,000 starter homes. Who's we? It's like, well, wait a second. When did the governor decide he's a philanthropist? We're giving $300 million to developers to try to increase supply. It's like, again, who's we? Why? What should happen is if I want to build a house and you want to build a house for me, that I can come to you, we can work out something, we start building. And we've gone so far from that. Hookup fees in cities have gone from.
Love you, man.
Hey, thank you.
Stay strong.
Thank you.
Big day.
Hookup fees for water in small towns have gone from $1,400 to $14,000, things like that. It's like, okay, now how do I afford to build a house if just the cost of getting utilities and infrastructure that now I'm into it $150,000 before I even start to build the house. That a lot of that is created by bad policy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What can you explain to me why we have inflation in the United States? What's causing it?
Is it a trick question?
No. Let me go ahead. It's not a trick question.
Too much.
It's a simple
too
question.
much supply chasing too few goods.
Okay.
You go and you print trillions of dollars of money and flood the economy with it, and then wonder why a candy bar costs $4. I mean, it's the basic of it is too much money chasing too few goods, and in this case, it's just simply too much. It's funny money at this point. During COVID,
Were you a legislator before?
I'm currently a legislator.
Okay, so are you familiar with Bill HB 348, the gold bill?
The what bill?
The bill on gold.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the bill?
I thought it was a good bill. At the basis of it, it said that the state can start investing in precious metals.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the state pulled out of precious metals is because it's kind of a volatile market. So, there's the thing that I think kind of is a redeeming quality of that is that it empowers the gold to transact business using gold, which is huge. And
You support that?
Oh yeah.
Supporting that.
Yeah, and if the state could if you could pay your taxes with gold or with gold backs, I think it's an alternative that could really stabilize Utah's economy in the face of a really collapsing federal economy.
So if you become governor, will you support the suing of the federal government for the dereliction of our what they're supposed to be paying us for the lands that they've taken over? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. And the answer is...
Because I think there's bills that have been passed, and there's nothing being done. The AG is not really wants to sue the government, so I want our lands back, or pay us what you owe us.
Well, that's, PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. So I was county commissioner for 8 years. And we'd go back to Washington, D.C. to lobby for PILT money. And I went to Senator Lee. The first time I went back there as a young commissioner, I said, it's not right that a commissioner from San Juan County, once one of the wealthiest counties in centrally assessed value, is coming back here with his hat in his hand asking for PILT money. Keep your PILT money, give us back our access to produce on these lands. That's what people want to do. They want to produce. They don't want a handout. And now in Washington, D.C., they call it welfare for the West. It's not welfare. It's like you own 67% of the state of Utah, and you're not willing to let us use it. You're not willing to let us even recreate on it half the time. And now you want to withhold the taxes or treat us like we're somehow second-class citizens because you're paying a fraction of what the taxes should be on that. So I don't like the idea of getting more PILT. I like the idea of the federal government vacating jurisdiction on that, and that's a good argument. I'm not talking about transferring ownership. I'm talking about vacating jurisdiction, allowing the state to have the jurisdiction that they received at statehood.
One of the things is that, a couple of months ago, a poll came out saying that over 40% of Utahns feel like the state and federal levels are not listening to our voices. So with that, one of the main things is also housing. So in the state of Utah, you look at most developers, they're building 3,000 or 4,000 square foot homes. These are not starter homes. So what are you going to be able to help Utahns with affording housing? So such as getting developers to realize they need to build starter homes that are 1,500 to 2,000 square foot homes and be able to lower housing prices because the supply is not meeting what the market needs. So as governor, what are you going to do to try to help Utahns with housing?
So in that situation, government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. They're creating those policies that incentivize low-income, high-density housing. So, thank you. If I can make more money building low-income, high-density housing, then that's what I'm going to go do. The flip side is like, well, say you've got a few $1 million, you want to build a big, nice house. And it's like, okay, I'll pull my crew off of here, and I'll come and I'll build you your $6 million home. So then my options, if I'm coming out of school looking, is like, well, do I want the low-income, high-density, or do I want the $6 million home? I don't have the middle ground, and the reason is because we have been incentivizing and subsidizing people to build this other type of housing, and it leaves a gap in the market. I believe it leaves a gap in the market for those people who want to build. And then the other thing we've done on that is we regulate that industry so heavily. The larger companies are able to manage that regulation. Smaller companies that would build a single-family home for $150 a square foot, there are very few of them that exist anymore. So you're dealing with the big boys. They're either building really highly lucrative, high-density housing or highly lucrative custom homes.
So how are you going to get the developers out of controlling the laws that are being passed in the state of Utah? So such as down in Draper, those houses slid off from the hillside, nothing happened to those developers.
That's a really big question, and it's a loaded question. I guess the question would be, how are you going to get those people out of the legislature? Because they're elected by their constituents to go up there, and that's who their districts elected. What I would do is get rid of the special interests that come in and lobby at the top. I was talking about this a little bit earlier. So we end up with a really top-down government in Utah, where those who are in the club are colluding with the big money banks, the big money interests in Salt Lake, the special interests. They make the decisions. They basically craft the legislation, and then they come in with all the wheels are greased so they can slide it through the legislature without your average legislator really understanding what's going on. the way I would fix that is to empower the legislature. First of all, get the executive out of the legislative business altogether. It's unconstitutional. Empower the legislature with staff and resources to actually write good bills, and bring those, instead of bills that leave a bunch of rule-making authority to the executive branch. Those two need to be separated. It goes a lot deeper than that too.
High five.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
You too. How are you?
Go ahead.
So, what do you see as being the number one issue that Utah is currently in the wrong direction, and what is your plan to right the ship?
There's new people here. I started sounding like a broken record myself, but it's statehood. You know, what is a state? If a state won't push back against the federal government, is it a state, or is it an administrative subunit of the federal government? Because the federal government will continue to push and demand and make laws and make rules, and
our land.
And we continue to say, oh well, I don't violate federal law. Of course I wouldn't. You know, we need to get back to that healthy thing of we're going to nullify that federal law. If they come in and say you got to tear down your coal-fired power plants because we signed an agreement called the Paris Climate Accord, and you got to get cows off the land because of the same agreement, a good state just tells them to pound sand, for lack of a better term. Say we're just not doing it. We saw that with Kristi Noem in South Dakota during COVID, when they came out with all the same requirements for South Dakota, and she just said, no, we're good. Our people can take care of this themselves. Yeah. So no money spent on a Corona task force, COVID task force. No money spent on policing all these people. No fines of the businesses, and that's a lazy government would be a much better government if it just lets people run their lives, and all the work should be done to take them out of that. So,
Very good answer.
yeah. Thanks. Sorry, let me get this guy first. Sorry.
You don't have to put the mic up. This is a real quick question.
Okay.
Have you read the book, The 5,000-Year Lead?
Absolutely.
And you understand its principles?
I believe I do.
You have spoken like you do, but I just wanted to check.
The power to try, the power to fail. Yeah.
Good luck.
I'm very much besides Scouts, I'm a student of Ron Paul, and I really believe, and just trust people to make decisions, because the government, when they do it, they usually get it wrong.
They do.
As well intended as they might be, which is questionable too. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go drill your LG.
Okay, yeah, take him on.
I only have two questions.
All right.
So question number one, you probably have the best vote in the legislature that people don't talk about, and the fact that you dissented on the independent entities bill, in the sense that we were trying to fund and do things with independent entities. What is your view of the Biden administration's hold in the independent entities, specifically the Point of the Mountain and the Inlet Port, that are now practicing ESG practices in our state? And as governor, how would you plan to stop that independent entity push that is happening?
I think with independent entities, you're talking about basically entities that can now create, they can tax, and they can regulate, they can create
they can develop, they can give subprime loans to developers.
They are 100% unconstitutional. They're unconstitutional for the state constitution, violation of the federal constitution, and the equal access for people. When you create that club and you give them that power, it's taxation without representation. It's all of the things that basically government was designed to prevent. So,
My last question would be to you is that in rural Utah, we had 21 suicides among these kids, and I think they're not talked about because they're white kids. Unfortunately, we have such a racial dynamic in society. One district alone had 9 suicides in rural Utah. What will you do to help those young kids in rural Utah know that their life is worth it?
I mean, the first question is, what's going on? What is going on? What's going on in our schools?
The news won't talk about it. The media won't talk about it. But we have kids dying, and I do feel like because they're white, they're not being talked about.
You've got social and emotional learning techniques that are being used on our kindergartners, which basically is to sit down with that child and find out what is it that's wrong with you. Might you be in the wrong body? Might you have an identity thing? Are your parents not basically you plant these ideas and then these kids grow up. CRT, critical race theory, is one of the most evil things because you've got kids now that are trying very hard to prove that they are not racist. Eight-year-olds should not have to prove that they're not racist. Correct. Yet they're doing this and they're getting this psychological grooming almost to become, I don't know, have some emotional problems, and I think it translates into the suicides. Healthy communities are much more resilient than unhealthy communities. We've done things that really are a distraction. Bills that actually go in and help suicide prevention are huge, providing counselors, providing resources to those people, but we've got to do it in an intelligent way because right now, some of the counselors that are supposed to be helping those kids are actually doing most of the damage.
What I'm noticing is that there's a disconnect between the families and the kids, so thank you, that's all I have for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I noticed that on your website, the Second Amendment was conspicuously absent. Everyone here is going to say they're pro-2A, right? But how pro-2A are you? What policy decisions would you do that would support the Second Amendment here in the state of Utah?
I guess maybe I'm pro-2A enough that I take that for granted. It's the fact that I never really think about, do I have a right to have guns? I've written a number of bills that stand up for that at the legislature. I didn't realize it was conspicuously absent on my website, but if it is, it's for me it's as much a part of my ethos as anything, as food. So it's like I haven't. I don't know. That's a good one. Well, I could put something up there, but it's one of those things like saying, I support the Second Amendment.
Something I'd recommend.
You too.
Something I'd recommend is the state of Georgia and the state of South Carolina recently passed laws saying that federal gun control will no longer have any right in the state of South Carolina or the state of Georgia.
Right.
That would be something that, real steps that we can take.
They call it a sanctuary state for Second Amendment, and which says whatever you do in the federal level, just know in Utah, we're never going down that path. And I think it's a great bill. I don't know that we've ever really tried to pass that bill. We passed a lot of other really good bills that really enshrine the Second Amendment. Utah, as the people of Utah, they value that. I don't see that ever, being threatened. But I'd love to be a sanctuary state for the Second Amendment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So me and my dad, we're from Payson, Utah, where that whole furry thing's going down, right? And once the kids walked out, we saw the response from the spokesperson of Nebo School District. And obviously it was just a gaslight to these kids that were exercising their First Amendment right. So my question is, what are you planning on doing, or what can you do to fight against these school districts that are showing how corrupted they are?
The key word there is school district. What is a school district? You've got the superintendent, you've got the school board members, 42 school districts in the state of Utah, and they all seem to have become part of a system, I'll be polite, a system of bureaucracy that is very top down. And they know what's best. And they know what they're going to, what kids should do and what kids shouldn't do. They don't like parents. They don't encourage parents. They prosecute parents who show up and get unruly. The people that should be empowered in this are the local school councils. There's parental councils for every school. They're supposed to be elected. If those were functioning right, I could see the chance of completely wiping out 42 school districts, going to all of those community school councils and letting the resources flow more directly to that level of people. What that essentially does, it's the Republican form of government where we, instead of concentrating power, we disperse it out, and the more you disperse it out, the more likely it is to preserve the honest people's rights, the people who are just trying to, live in a community, because our communities are pretty friendly places until they get infiltrated with some of the ideology that comes from the top down, and that's my observation, and that would be my solution, honestly, is to make those parental councils superior to the school board, if we even had to keep a school board. Yeah, that's a very interesting situation. Hey.
Can we get a picture with you real quick?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Do you want me on my pedestal?
A couple Trumpers. See if I can get you. So let me tell you what I'm doing. I got a Cox shirt, and I'm going to play he, him, Cox.
Yeah.
And vote Lyman on back. We love you.
Thank you. Sorry. Should have copped on either.
Wyoming recently passed a bill that bans out-of-state hedge funds from owning single-family homes in Wyoming.
Thank you.
Like BlackRock and things like that. And at the end of the decade, they have to get rid of their holdings. So do you support something like that in Utah?
I absolutely would. Is that on? Hello?
No, it's not on.
Probably ran out. I would absolutely support something like that. It's
Sorry, what was this question? I'm sorry.
Out-of-state hedge funds like BlackRock are buying up single-family homes. Wyoming banned that, and I want to see that done in Utah.
Yeah, I think so.
Man, that would
Yeah.
Our state treasurer's pushing that pretty hard.
Yeah. So you always have to be careful when you say, well, government's going to put a stop to this, because government has a really bad record of stopping good things and promoting bad things. So for government to put a stop to that, it's a two-edged sword. So it'd have to be intelligent policy. But I 100% agree that we should not be selling all of our housing stock to large corporations. I guess you'd put a limit on that. You'd say, 4 homes or 5 homes or whatever Jeremy's got, 10 homes, I don't know. But yeah, this idea of letting people say, well, we don't want to sell land to China, the CCP. It's like, well, you don't know where that money is coming from. And when we're talking about these big corporations like BlackRock, that is essentially global money that's funding all those things. So I totally support that.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
So I'm Jeremy from Grant County, and I'm really sick of the wishy-washy politicians. Every 4 years they come along and they do song and dance. What we need is courage. And
is what?
We need courage from our elected officials. So can you give me some sort of example of courage or leadership that would make you a better governor than someone else?
Well, I don't know if it takes courage or just an understanding of the proper role of the federal government versus the state government. But to tell the federal government to pound sand is not an impolite thing to do when they come in and say, we're going to close your roads, we're going to take away your cattle, we're going to take away your industries. That's the proper response. And the founders knew that. They wrote the Constitution. Hamilton said state legislatures should be not only vigilant, but jealous and suspicious guardians of the rights of the people against federal encroachment. It's like, why? Because he knew, he was the one that was promoting central banks. He knew that they would encroach. He knew that that's what the federal government does by nature. So if the state, by training or conditioning, backs away from their jurisdictional footprint every time the federal government says that they have to, then pretty soon you end up where we're at now. And we're a long ways from where we started in 1896 and what statehood was supposed to mean. So understanding can go a long ways. And I guess once you understand it and then you say, well, but we'd lose our federal funding, maybe that's where a little bit of courage comes in, a little bit of backbone. And then even then it's some understanding, because you say, well, what's the cost of going along with this? We have unhealthy forests, we have unhealthy land, we have a suffering energy sector, our people are becoming impoverished, the state's doing better and better. So the cost of following that is much greater than the cost of telling them to just, yeah.
That's his question.
Thank you.
They're starting the AG race and calling to order.
Okay.
All right, I guess we're going to go to order.
Let's make it quick.
All right.
Okay, so there's a lot of people who are both, generally, if they're for you, they also kind of like Jorgensen and vice versa, which I think is great. I just need to hear from you, because I've already asked Jorgensen this question. If one of you finds that you're polling way ahead of the other, like you guys are all both on the ballot, one of you is polling ahead of the other, would you be willing to bow out in order not to split the vote?
Yeah, and it's probably a proportional thing, but yeah, I've said that to Carson from the beginning. He said it to me, and this is kind of the process. You get in, you find out where things are at. Carson.
Cox is going to be a big one to beat. It's unfortunate, but
Whether we're talking about Sylvia or Carson or Scott, we're running against Spencer Cox.
Yeah.
He's the one we know he's going to be on the ballot because he's already got his signatures. And he's also the one he's the incumbent. He's the one whose policies we all disagree with.
Right.
So that's the ultimate race. Nobody wants to see that become a three-way race that throws the election his way.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate
thank you.
I've got a question. So, some of the people that have represented you around the convention.
So here to hear.
Some of the people who have represented you around the convention have said that you have said, this is what they're saying you said, okay? They've said that you would not take on any other legislative action until SB 54 is repealed.
I've told my colleagues in the legislature that I'm not signing a bill till they bring me a repeal of SB 54.
Okay, so I have a follow-up on that. The follow-up is SB 54 gained traction because people felt like they weren't represented in the caucus convention.
Right.
So what would you promote or propose that we replace the signature gathering path with that is constitutional and can get through the convention or through the legislature?
The point is, should a party be able to choose its course of selecting its candidates? And I believe that the answer to that is yes. The argument for SB 54 was, yeah, but the Republican Party is so dominant that it excludes people. Well, so be it. It is the Republican Party. The Republican Party has a right to choose its candidates the way that it decides without the legislature pushing any legislation to tell them otherwise.
So, but if you become the governor, you kind of become the head of the party, right? So you have a responsibility to promote the success and growth of the Republican Party. And arguably getting rid of SB 54 would move a lot of people into the independent camp away from the party.
If that were the situation, and the result was that a party could choose its candidates the way that the party chose to do it, then so be it. Maybe the Republican Party would have to, alter or do something, but it should be the party that's doing that. The legislature needs to stay out of that. Whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans or the Libertarians or the Independents or whatever, leave the parties alone. Let them run their own parties. That's the essence of what SB 54 was coming in and saying, you know what, Republican Party, we think you should do it a little differently, and we're going to pass legislation that forces you to do that. I don't think that's right.
And I agree on principle, but again, the question is, these people have a right to enfranchisement. They have a right to have their voice heard. And if they're a member of the Republican Party, they have a right to have their voice heard. And as a leadership, we're doing a piss poor job of that.
So do you think that belongs in the party or in the governor's office?
I think that it belongs in the party, but as of now, it's in the governor's office. And so we've got to, there are principles, and I agree with the principle 100%. But there is also the practical reality that it is in the governor's office.
It's in the governor's office because of SB 54.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if you get rid of SB 54 without a solution to the problem of enfranchisement, we risk destroying the party.
Fundamentally,
it becomes a Pyrrhic victory.
Fundamentally, we're talking about two different things. You're talking about how can government fix the Republican Party, and I'm talking about how can the Republican Party get government out of its business.
So what I'm saying is, I agree that the government has no place in the Republican Party. We agree on that 1,000%. But what I'm saying is, when you become elected to the governorship, you become a leader in the Republican Party, and you help set the tone. And by saying we're just going to get rid of SB 54 without something to replace it, not through the state, but through the party mechanism, we risk enfranchising 90% of our voters. We had 10% turnout to caucuses. We cannot say that we represent the voters of the state of Utah when 10% show up to caucus.
So you're a fan of SB 54?
No, I'm not.
Well, you could be. It's okay if you are, but
satisfy those people that like SB 54. That's what I'm asking him.
I'm not the party chairman. The governor is not the party chairman, and let's hope that he never tries to act as the party chairman. I feel like SB 54 was the legislature saying, look, Republican Party, we'll take it from here. We'll take over. And it gutted the caucus system.
And you're absolutely right. It is.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it is. But I'm saying if we want the Republican Party to continue to be relevant in this state, in perpetuity, right? Because what we are seeing is a mass influx of independent voters from California or left-leaning Republicans who don't have experience with the caucus system. We need to find a way to envelop them in. And I'm saying if you're running to be the governor, you want to get SB 54 out, you got to have a solution. And that's just the practical nature of the beast right now, in my opinion. And I agree on the principle. 100%, you're absolutely right. It's unconstitutional to have the government try and dictate to people. But the actuality is that we've got to have a replacement or we're going to lose. And we're going to lose big.
That's a problem for the party. The problem...
And that's a fair answer.
I mean, I can see the dilemma, but you can't look to the governor or the legislature to fix that. You could say, I like SB 54 and I think it should stay in place, or something along those lines. I'm much more austere about that. It's like, leave the party alone.
And I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
I think that's totally fair, and I appreciate that you're acting on principle here. I'm just saying that the reality is that if we replace it without something, or if we repeal it without something to replace it, on the party side, like you're talking about, on the party side, we will lose all of those independent voters who are considering Republicans, because they'll say these guys they talk a big game about representing the people, but they don't do a good job.
So maybe
I
if
don't want to monopolize your time.
Maybe if I understand right, maybe you're saying that repealing SB 54 is going to damage the party, and I should be careful about that.
I am saying that, and I'm saying work with the party to have a replacement.
We gotta go get the seats right now.
I appreciate your answer.
No, thank you.
Great to meet you.
Hey guys, the meeting's been called to order, and they're going to start the Attorney General vote.
But thank you, and
we've got to make sure we get a good Attorney General in. So please
I know
get in
you
and
can't
vote.
really